A lapped zip you probably find at the back of a skirt, and if you think overlapped, there's one piece of fabric that covers over the teeth, so the teeth are actually offset to one side of the zip, like this one. Not very difficult to insert a lapped zip, so let's show you how to do it. This is how I'd sew in a lapped zip. So what I've done so far is done my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I've sewn up to the bottom of where I want the zip to fit. And then on the top section I've ironed that back and the same seam allowance, making sure that's just nice and straight. Then I'm going to turn my fabric over to the right side, and you can see where my zip's going to go here, making sure that the slider's facing up. And it's easier to pop this in with the zip undone. So I'm going to slide that behind my fabric. And when I start to pin, I'm going to leave that around about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the zip, or the top of the zip, because that'll allow for a waistband. And then just dampen your fingers a little bit and roll that seam out again by around about 1/8 of an inch, and then pin. And that means that the lap from the other side of the zip will cross over the teeth of the zip without showing any of the teeth through. So again, just unroll that round about 1/8 of an inch, not 1/4 of an inch, all the way down. I'm going to just pin that in place. Then for the lap section on the other side, I'll do exactly the same without unrolling, and then I'm going to tack around that by hand before I take it to the sewing machine. Now I'm using quite a brightly coloured zip on here, so it does colour coordinate if you're going to see it, so I'm not too worried about that. So again, just unroll very slightly all the way down to the seam at the bottom, keeping those the edge of your fold nice and neat to the teeth. I can leave the centre section for just a second, or the bottom section just here, while I turn this over and pin onto the other side. So I'll just do that zip back up again. And that's how the zip's going to go. And in fact, before I pin on this side, the best thing to do would be to actually sew down this side of my fabric. So what I'm going to do next is to leave that section for now. I'll take my needle and thread in a contrasting colour, and I'm just going to tack down there by hand. So I've done my tacking stitch all the way down the side here, and I've taken out the pins. The next thing to do is put this under my sewing machine. Oh, and I've put the zip right up to the end, or the tape up to the end of my fabric, because that's where either it'll fold over and fasten over with a hook and eye, or I'm going to put a waistband across the top, because this is probably going to be a skirt. So I'm going to line this up so that when I sew, the edge of my foot is quite close to the edge of my teeth. And I'm going to use quite a short stitch. Start with the needle in the down position. I'm just going to back tack a couple of stitches to secure those, and then away we go. And I'm just going to go straight down this side. So it's around about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the teeth, but I'm just using the side of my foot as a guideline. Careful when you get to the slider, because I don't want that to distort my stitches. And then back tack. And then I'm going to take this side out, take out the tacking stitches. I'll do that in just a second. But I want to pin the second side in place now. So that's stitched in nice and neatly on the one side. I'm going to pull the zip together. And then, because I had that extra 1/8 of an inch fold over, when I put the second side of my seam down, that should overlap by 1/8 of an inch. So I'll pin this in place. And then just briefly tack along this side. I'll just do that very quickly because it is held in place by the pins. And I'm only tacking this in place so that when I go towards the pins, the machine isn't going to distort around them, because you will find that your fabric moves when you get closer to the pins of the machine. So that's just a long stitch just to tack that in place, and then we'll sew down the second side. Now I'd start from the top and sew down when I'm inserting a zip. Just make sure that meets together at the top. Because if your fabric is going to shift or move, it'll both go in the same direction. Rather than if you sew down one side, turn around and come back up again, you can find that your fabric's twisted slightly. So just take my pins out, bring the machine forward, And I'll need to put the zipper foot on my machine over to the other side, so I'm taking the needle this time to the right hand side of the foot. And then do the same again, this time with the zipper closed. Oh, in fact I'll open it slightly, just while I back tack the top end. And I'm sewing a little bit further out. I can feel where the edge of the zipper tape is, and I don't want to go beyond that because otherwise it just won't, back again, there we go. It won't secure the zip. So I'll just sew a few stitches to secure this. Then I'm going to lift the foot up and push the slider out of the way. And my needle's in the down position, so it doesn't matter if I'm quite rough with this section to move that out of the way, because I'm still going to start sewing in the same place that I left off. And I'm going to sew a straight line, making sure I'm catching that zip, so I'm following my tacking lines. And when I get to the bottom of the zip, to that same point where I started on the opposite side, I'm going to sew straight across to meet my first row of stitches. And then back tack again, lift my foot up. And then I'm ready to remove my tacks. And when I do, I'll do that in just a second. There's my perfect zip, which is concealed inside the lap. One side of the fabric laps over the top, the other side meets up with the teeth. And when I pull the zip together, because I gave it that extra 1/8 of an inch rollover, when that's pressed nicely, you won't be able to see that zip at all.